I would like to talk today about a game that is very close to my heart, and a series that is very close to my heart, and that is Insurgency Sandstorm. Insurgency Sandstorm, it's a divisive game, or at least it was. It seems the lion's share of the community is now turning against it. But as an avid player of Insurgency 2014, I remember the announcements and the teasers for Sandstorm. The hype was just real. It was Insurgency, but it was bigger, it was bolder, on a far more powerful engine. People were excited for it, there's no denying that. But before the game even released, NWI, or No World Interactive, made its first really big decision that alienated a community. And that was the Ambush community. Insurgency 2014, it had a large portion of its community who were dedicated to the Ambush game mode. Ambush is a VIP attack defend mode for PvP, where one team defends the VIP and gets them to the objective, the other team has to kill the VIP. It's very simple. But it worked, and it was just very, very well done. It was easily my favourite thing to play in Insurgency 2014, and I adored the community. It was just fun, and depending on what server you played on, it was either serious fun or dumb fun. I can't remember the server that did it, but one server had a plugin where you could get a primary weapon as the VIP, which is something you weren't allowed to do unless you picked it up. And you could pick any weapon you want. And the VIP with an M249 with no attachments was stupid fun. It was stupid fun and it never got old. But NWI decided Ambush wasn't going to return for Sandstorm. They wanted to focus on what they decided were their more staple modes, and it angered many, many fans, including myself. I have no illusions over this. This stopped people migrating from 2014 to Sandstorm. And in my personal opinion, they alienated possibly the best, most welcoming part of the 2014 community. But despite this, I was willing to give Sandstorm its fair dues, and the more and more we saw, the more and more hyped I got. The graphics looked great, the soundscape was ear orgasm levels of perfection. And then the beta. The beta for Sandstorm was pretty awful. The mechanics and gameplay were there, but the optimization was garbage, and you don't expect optimization to be the primary focus for a beta. It was completely unplayable for the vast amount of players, and myself included. I was running a 980 at the time, which wasn't a brilliant card, but it shouldn't have struggled as hard as it was. And I have no illusions that this pushed people away as well. The final build of the game was better, however, when it first released. Optimization wasn't awful, it wasn't garbage, it was still but it wasn't, it wasn't as terrible. As I said, I was running a 980 at the time. But unfortunately, the game still struggled with numbers even initially. The best part of Sandstorm originally, for me, was the 5v5 firefight mode, competitive. And I know it wasn't a hit with everyone, but I remember playing with some of the boys from my army unit back then, fucking Bane, Havoc, Fox, and a couple others. And we would 5-stack it, as you should, because it's competitive mode, you should have a full team. And we had a really fun time, because the gameplay was just solid, and the maps, the sections they picked for firefight just made sense. There were lanes for sure, but there were options in those lanes. And on the smaller scale, the game was amazing. But the competitive mode suffered, and through low player numbers, eventually the community for the official competitive just collapsed altogether, and it now only lives on through external communities. You can't even queue for it anymore, it was removed from the main menu. Which just sucks, really. So it was a rocky start for sure, but the game had promise. And that's what kept many, many people around, I think. And it's certainly what kept me about. The hope that NWI would just upkeep the game in the right way. Maybe garner some of the older community to, come on over and give it a shot. But, it didn't work. The DLCs are one major reason for why it didn't work. The first DLCs that came out, the first Cosmetic ones, dashed any real hope of bringing the more, shall we say, hardcore of 2014 fans over. Because they were cosmetic, for sure. It wasn't game interfering in the slightest, but the skins looked like they'd been ripped from Call of Duty. At the time, Infinite Warfare was the new one, I believe, and it looked like it had been ported straight from there. They were awful. They were awful, and I defended them initially, but as we've gone on and more of them have been released, yeah, I can't look back at that and say that was, remotely appropriate for the game at the time, because it just wasn't. And it got so bad that NWI promised a number of months later, I believe 2 or 3 patches, actually major patches down the line, that they were going to have new visual guidelines, new visual guidelines for cosmetic DLC and that kind of thing. And then they released the two-tone pack. Now the two-tone pack now, if you look, looks quite good actually. It's tan and brown and black and green, and it's it looks like something you might actually want a firearm to look like in the real world in the slightest. But originally, those muted colours weren't muted. They were fucking bright. The shotgun looked like a Nerf gun. It was genuinely terrible. It was utterly awful. And slip-ups like this, especially after being promised new visual guidelines, it didn't help in any way with the game's dwindling popularity and the players' dwindling patience with NWI. I obviously, can't mention Sandstorm without mentioning the PvE mode. And it's a mode I very much enjoy, but it's not been free of problems either. Like, the AI skill and reaction times fluctuate from patch to patch, and they very rarely get it right. The AI is either fucking, John Wick, or it's as useless as a fucking ashtray on a motorbike. It's genuinely either that good or that bad. There's never an in-between. And I understand AI is a difficult thing, but it's pretty terrible. But, time has gone on. Patch after patch has been released, and, it doesn't feel like it's gotten any better. If anything, the game and the gameplay has slowly, progressively got worse. The new maps are aesthetically pleasing, but tedious to play, and the new weapons are either ridiculous or fucking useless. And they finally added Ambush, which is a lot of fun, and it is my favourite PvP mode still, even in Sandstorm. But it's too little too late. It should have been there from the beginning. Ambush was a fucking staple of 2014. There was no reason to not bring it over to Sandstorm immediately. And I don't know if what they were trying to do was get that influx of players, come on over later on. But it was far too little, far too late, and a lot of people didn't bite. The bottom line is, I love Insurgency. I love the series, and I want to love Sandstorm like I used to, but I really have no faith in New World Interactive to make decisions that will extend, revitalize, or even remotely positively impact the longevity of the game. And that's a crying shame.